the first time we did a play test in the office, I can tell you, because it's a co-op. It was so funny because everybody died during setup. Then you know this is not a game.
Oh no!
Being a co-op, the game has to be strong, but not that strong.
Yeah. Welcome to Cardboard Creations, where we discuss the process, techniques, and inspiration for designing board games. I'm your host, Candice Harris, and I'm super excited to be here today with Besime Uyanik to find out how Sammu-ramat was created. But first, let's jump into a brief overview of how Sammu-ramat plays. Sammu-ramat is a cooperative board game where 1 to 5 players represent Queen Sammu-ramat's advisors, surrounding the Assyrian royal court in the 9th century BCE. Each game, players must assist Sammu-ramat through one of the many challenges that she encountered during her reign to keep the empire strong and protected against internal unrest, external threats, natural disasters, and more. Each advisor has its own abilities and strengths, and during the game, players work together playing action cards to move from region to region on the board and battle enemies, all while trying to balance the needs of the region's military, supplies, health, and diviners. There are several ways to lose, but you win by successfully completing your challenge and ensuring the empire is stable and Queen Sammu-ramat is safe. Hey Besime, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I've been wanting to talk to you forever about your game ever since it was going on crowdfunding. But I really love that Sammu-ramat is highlighting a rare part of history, or at least an unknown aspect of history that many people, I wasn't really aware of this at all. And also within the game, I love that it's a historical cooperative game, which is really fantastic. And the fact that you have so much variety from all the challenge cards and different characters, it's really cool. So I gotta know, what initially inspired you to create Sammu-ramat?
And thank you for appreciating the game first off, and it was my father. Definitely my father. As I was growing, my heritage, I'm Assyrian heritage, so it's part of my heritage. And my father always talked when we were growing up. I have 2 sisters, and he was telling about this fantastic queen who, was out fighting for her empire and so on. So we grew up with this strong woman character in our life. So I appreciate my dad for doing that. So when I was going to do a game by myself, I was like, I need to do a game about Sammu-ramat. And I wanted to lift a female character, as you said. And I love history and ancient history. So it was kind of obvious what the game was going to be about for me. So
that's fantastic. So what made you curious to create a board game?
I actually started as a CEO for this publishing company, Iron Game Design first. And I have, and for me, it was so important to know the actual thing we're doing. And that's, creating fantastic games. So I needed to know the basics. So I was talking to Yoon, who's the founder of the company, and he said, you know all the parts of the business side of the company, but the creative side? And I said, no, but he said, you have to do this as well. So that's how the process started. And again, it was so obvious it needed to be about Sammu-ramat, this Assyrian queen. So that's, from there, I started designing this game.
Yeah, and that's off the bat a very unique story. The fact that you're trying to get more of a taste for the company that you're running and working with and everything, and that's super cool. So when and how, when you realized, hey, I'm going to make a game and start to understand more of the creative process of creating board games, when and how did you take your initial idea and like actually turn it into a playable prototype?
It goes. I started writing rules quite fast because I like writing. So I started and we do a lot of research at Iron Game Design. So all of our games are like fact-based games. So research is really important. So I started doing research, and then kind of the story or the game talks. It started talking to you. It needed to be a map of the Assyrian Empire. So I printed out the map, an old map, and that's where it
Yeah.
started. You have the map, you have this character, it needs to be about Sammu-ramat. And what kind of challenges does she has? She has to defend this empire. She have to make people happy in this, in this empire and so on. And that kept on like building. And then you build the prototype after that. Of course, you have to have the map, you have to have the character cards and so
Right.
on. So that's how the first prototype came up. It's just, grabbing stuff from the history that you're reading. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fun process. And as I said, I love history. So for me, it was it was so much fun just to do the research.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was going to ask too, because I'm always really fascinated by historical games. Like any game getting created is just really awesome. And it's like a piece of art and
Yeah,
like
it
just
is.
somebody's creative expression. But when you are creating a historical game, you, how much research did you do, or how long did you study up before you started, getting an idea for what you wanted the game to feel like?
You want the passion for the history, you have to feel that you're like engaging in the history because that will transfer to the game as well and the players as well. So you need to yourself feel the passion. So you need to read quite a lot first to see is there like enough here. The Assyrian Empire was a bit difficult because it's so long ago, and Sammu-ramat lived like 800 before Christ. So it was quite long ago, difficult to find stories, but still there was stuff. And, I started reading a couple months before, and started to have a story in my head. But again, even if you're doing a historical game, it still needs to be a fun game. So you have to have the balance. It can't be a history book. It has to be a game and an art piece, as you said. So yeah, again, balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. So how much playtesting was done and what was your playtesting process like?
So I did the prototype quite early, and then I started playtesting with friends and family, and I think most people do that, and then they stop at that process, and that's bad because your friends and family will think whatever you do is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the scary part is getting it out to external playtesters. But yeah, my family and friends were still like kind of harsh on me, because this is a
Nice.
co-op game, as you said in the beginning. So Sammu-ramat is a co-op game. I didn't mean it to be a co-op game, but again, the historical part was showing that it needed to be a co-op because
Ah,
the Assyrian Empire, like the royal families, they had a lot of advisors because the empire was so big, and they
yes.
needed to have a lot of advisors from different part of the empire. So that's kind of quite smart to have like people helping you, to lead the empire. So it became co-op. It like again the history it kind of talked to me, and
Yeah,
it said I
yeah.
need to be a co-op because I myself like competitive games, really board games, but so it was a bit challenging. But anyhow, so making a co-op is kind of more difficult than doing a competitive game because in the
Mhm.
competitive game, I think players are like driving the story forward. In the co-op, the game has to be challenging enough and fun enough to play against you that yeah. So really, from the beginning, my friends were saying, "Oh, we need enemies. Who's like doing something for us?" And my sister, who plays a lot of video games, said, "Where's the big boss?" So I needed to add a big boss.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, but then you go on to external play testers, and I started. We usually use a tabletop simulator for our games because we have players from all over the world. But for me, my first process was to have external play testers coming to our office and play there because we wanted to see the physical, like using the actual components and so on. Because in tabletop simulator or anything digital, it's like difficult to see how everything is really working on the components and how
Yeah.
big the text is going to be, because you can zoom in everything.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that makes sense. And you can also, like, I guess, get people's reaction
yeah.
and to
Yes.
how they're like
Absolutely.
interacting with the physical components and everything.
Yeah. And with a co-op, it's so important that they talk to each other, that you feel that it is really a co-op, and that it's not just an alpha leader that's taking over the whole game. So that
Right.
was important as well. So you're completely right. It's important to see how they interact with each other.
That's cool. So I know you said you started writing the rules pretty early on, like you started with the rules. At what point, I guess, did you decide to create the plutorial? I love that, by the way, that the fact that you have a play tutorial to
Yeah.
help ease people into the game, and it like kind of relates back to the history as you're learning how some of the key mechanisms work. At what
Mm.
point did you and or like the team at Ion kind of develop that?
It came very late, so we did the rule book first. So and then we noticed that it was so difficult because we wanted it to be a game that is open for a larger crowd, since it's a co-op. But so we noticed like it was difficult with the rule book. So we said, how can we do this and still tell the stories? So the tutorial is telling you a story as you go on and learn the game.
Yeah.
So it came quite late. So it was one of the last things we did, is to have the tutorial, and it's a separate book. So you need it maybe the first time if you want, because everybody don't like want a tutorial or help in getting started. So
Right.
it's a separate book, and you can put it away if you don't want it later on. So
That is super cool. And I guess going back to your prototyping and playtesting, there are, I don't even remember how many challenge cards you have in this game, but it's super cool that there are so many of them and that you can just like have this different experience or put together a campaign. How did you figure out what those different challenges were going to be and like how many to include in the game and all of that?
for us at Iron Game Design, it's kind of important to have the like replayability. So we usually have a lot of cards in our games, because we do want people to play it all over again, and it feels like it has the diversity. So I have 20 challenge cards in the game,
Wow.
which is quite a lot. So you can play 20 times, but you can also play a campaign or like a challenge again, and it still differ because you have the event cards that can differ as well. So there is a lot of replayability. And the challenges, I wanted them to be like a story again, tell a story, help you with your imagination on what can happen. So it's
Sure.
stories based on the whole Assyrian period, because it's so difficult. Sammu-ramat was only queen for 5 years. So when
Mm,
her husband died, until her son took over again. So I couldn't just base it on her, period. So I'm
right,
kind of
right.
based it on stories that I read during the whole period of time the Assyrian Empire was big. So it's a little bit based on what could have happened or what might have happened. That's the
Yeah, yeah.
challenges that you're helping Sammu-ramat with going
Very
forward.
cool. I really like also, just as an aside, the Empire token board and how that integrates with the main board and everything that you're doing in the game.
Being a designer, I think all designers listening into this, or everyone that has tried to create, you just want to add more and more to the game, and it's difficult to know kind of when to stop. So you need someone to tell you stop now. But like I wanted to do a story about Sammu-ramat, or create, a game about her and her challenges as but also the challenges of being a leader. And that's when the empire board came up, like just not
Ah,
just Samuramat, but being a leader, because you have to balance different parts to be a leader, and you might take decisions that affects one thing, but it's good for something else. So
Yeah,
being a
yeah.
leader is always balancing, and people might not understand what decisions you're taking, but you need to do it for the overall like good of the thing.
Right.
So that's the resources there, so you need to
Very,
balance those resources into your empire, and you have to have all parts of it to make
yeah.
sure that the empire survives. So that was part of
Awesome.
the leader.
Very cool. Very cool. So what would you say was like your biggest challenge when you guys were designing and developing Sammu-ramat?
I have a great team that was working with me for this game, so I'm very lucky. So I have a game developer, Robin. So whenever I counted the challenge, I just like talked to him, and we went forward. But the difficult part is like to have this historical part and seeing again what I said. It has to still be a fun game. It can't. So to balance like how much of the historical accuracy should I take into the game and what should I not have to make it a great game. And being a co-op game, you can't have an alpha leader just taking over the whole game, because that will not make it fun for
Right.
everybody else around the table. So how do I make a game that is like it's co-op, that makes people like gets people to really talk and just make sure that everybody's involved in it, and that tells a story, but it's not just the historical, but not just not just the
Right.
history
Right.
base. So yeah. So those are the balances I had. But again, I have a fantastic team. So once I get stuck, I just could, and I think that's important for all designers, that you should have really someone close that you can just bounce out, help you through the challenges.
Yeah, and I noticed like nowadays there are a lot more games coming out where there are multiple designers.
Yeah.
And I know some designers kind of almost exclusively work with other designers, but also like much credit to the developers out there
Yes,
that aren't
absolutely.
always acknowledged, but like they're
They
definitely
are doing
doing so
fantastic
much.
job. I have
Yeah.
fantastic game developers. They are the ones that are, continue playtesting. They are balancing the game, like balancing all cards. I can't say how, yeah, all credits to game developers, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Besides like kind of figuring out this balance of covering the history, making it a fun game and a challenging cooperative game that, without like an alpha leader problem, did you have any like aha moments when you were like at any point during the design process of this game?
Yeah. And no, I probably did. I keep on forgetting, but it was like several parts. Like when it became a co-op, because I really didn't think I like. I really do like competitive games, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so competitive in games, you know. But it was so when I like decided it will be a co-op, I'm like, of course this should be a co-op.
Yeah.
And then when it became like first external playtest I had with the people coming in there, and they had so much fun. And I said, that was also like a moment, was like, this is something I did, and they are having so much fun and discussing.
Aw, yeah.
So that was, another thing. That was, and so, yeah, but I think but it's so easy to forget. So I would say, like, keep a record of everything you're doing during the whole process. I
For
can't
sure.
even believe that I designed the game. Like, did I do this, or
Yes,
it
you
kind of felt
did.
like it just happened by itself. But yes,
Your life
I
just
did it. So I'm
flashed.
not.
Yeah.
It was challenging. But,
Yeah. Yeah. That is really awesome. And I'm glad you didn't, I'm glad you took the approach of like thinking of like what type of game actually works with this history versus just
yeah,
like forcing it to be a competitive
yeah,
game. Way to take one for the team.
yeah.
So the cards the standees, everything, like the art and graphic designer is really fantastic in Sammu-ramat. How are those decisions made?
I worked with a fantastic artist, Madeleine Fjell, and she quite fast. Also, she started almost at the same time as I did. This is not usual either, but we started together, so we did talk a lot about the history together. And she did a lot of research, and she loves history as well. So she was, she put so much time on, finding old. And again, it's difficult during that time period because there is not so much left. And the game is based on not just the Assyrian Empire, but we have like countries next to the Assyrian empires
Right.
that the Assyrian Empire sometimes like expanded and took over, but at other times and it like shrank. So she was also looking at, how did the clothing look at in Egypt, or what kind of icons should we have from Egypt, or like
Yeah.
so yeah, or Babylon or Medes, and so she put a lot of time at it as well, and then we discussed what kind of style we wanted. Both of us were pretty sure it should be a woman on the front of the box because that's not so common. So,
Yeah, the box cover is very like iconic.
Thank you.
How did you, just out of curiosity, how did you find the artist? Was she someone you at Ion, had worked with before?
So we have kind of a studio model where we have in-house artists as well. So Madeleine has done several of our games. She has done Pax Viking, for example, Vendor to Viking, So
Oh,
and Modern
yeah.
Titan. So she has done several of the games that we have.
That actually makes sense now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm remembering what those covers look like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I mean, this is probably obvious, but like usually I ask how people come up with the name of the game. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's your centerpiece, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. I really wanted to lift her, but now I understand that people don't know her, so I should have had a Syrian queen or something underneath it. But it's based on her, so I wanted to lift her. So it's her name, and she's fantastic because her name lasted throughout the years as well. Because it's not common that women from that, even though women had a lot of rights back then, it was not common that it was written down. That and yeah, they did write about her and said that she was a queen, and so she did make
Yeah.
an impact during her time. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I know Sammu-ramat was crowdfunded. At what point did you and the development team know, like, hey, we're ready to like put this on crowdfunding and offer it up?
As soon as you kind of have the idea, and as I said, the artist started working with me quite fast. So once we had play tested it a couple of rounds and we saw that, this is holding, this is like working now.
Yeah.
But you really need to do a lot of play tests, I would say, before, going to crowdfunding. So you know that this is a game that I would be proud to print and send to people, So do a lot of play tests and make sure that it's something that you can stand behind. And that's when we felt that this is like now we're done and now we can do this.
Cool.
Then the first time we did a play test in the office, I can tell you, because it's a co-op. It was so funny because everybody died during setup. Then this is not a game.
Oh
no! But, being a co-op, the game has to be strong, but not that strong.
Yeah.
So after a couple of rounds, when you see there's like at least 50% chance that you can win the game, then it felt like I'm done now, and I can see if people would want to have this game. So I think crowdfunding we use crowdfunding quite a lot, and I think it's fantastic both that you can talk to the players quite early, because we never take a game that is completely done to crowdfunding, because we do want the players to
Give
feedback
you
to us and be
feedback.
able
Yeah.
to take in the suggestions they have. So I always tell my company that you have to be like 80% done, both with the art and the roles, but the rest you have to listen to the players as well, because I want them to be involved. And I think that's with crowdfunding, that was the aim first. So
Yeah.
we do want to listen to them. So it was done, but not completely.
I think that's one of the really nice things about crowdfunding is that you can get that engagement from players who are able to like either read the rule book, watch some preview videos, or try it on TTS or something.
Mhm.
That's super cool. Well,
Yeah.
Besime, I'm so like happy for you that your game is
Thank
out
you.
in the wild now. As a first time designer with your first board game and working with the great development team and art team and everything that you had access to out of all your experience making Sammu-ramat, do you have any advice for someone out there who might be interested in making a historical cooperative game? And
Yeah,
I'll
I
say
was.
I'll say historical and or cooperative,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
either.
Yeah, I would say like do a lot of research first, and then you should find because you work with it for so long, and then you need to play after it comes out. You're still gonna play it, so make sure that you do a game where you have your passion. I would say, even if it's not historical, whatever game you do, you need to have it the passion, because this will, be with you for such a long time. But if it's historical, do a lot of research and find something you like and you want to tell a story about. And then if it's a co-op, you really do need to do playtests early on, because it needs to. You have to see that people around the table are, talking to each other, because that's
Yes.
part of the co-op, and that they feel like a team. So I would do an early prototype. Doesn't have to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't beautiful. you know? And then do first play tests with friends and family, but quite fast. Take in people that will tell you the truth, and that's external parties. So that's my tips for historical or co-op, or both in combination. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Besime, thank you so much. It's been like great chatting with you. It's great to hear the origin story of Sammu-ramat and how it was created. Is there anything else you're working on for Sammu-ramat, or anything else you're working on in general that you'd like to mention?
I myself, I'm gonna do more games, because this was such a fun process, and I have more stories to tell. And I've been talking about Zenobia, who is another fantastic queen, and
Yes.
there's also Nubia is part of my map as well, and Samramat, and there's fantastic queens, warrior queens. There is as well. So I want to continue telling those stories that is not
Love it.
so common. But in our company as well, there's a lot of new games coming out, and we want to continue talking about like these historical parts. We want to lift different sort of people in our games. Our values are really important for me, and I want to
I
people to
love
see
that.
that we don't get. Yeah.
Yes, and I definitely, and ever since I've known you for a couple years,
Yeah.
but ever since I've known you, I noticed that Ion and you keep pushing that like education, getting like cultural diversity and
Yeah.
history, and it's really really cool. And I'm glad
Thank
that
you.
this company exists and you all are focused on that. And
Thank
I love this
you.
idea of these Queen games coming
Yeah,
out.
right. It might not be co-op though. It's like I want to do my
You're
I
gonna
want to do
figure
my
out which one's
certificate.
gonna be best to make competitive. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again,
Thank you.
Besime, and it was lovely talking with you. And congrats again on your first game.
Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning into Cardboard Creations. Hopefully, it's been as inspiring and fascinating for you as it has been for me. And remember, the only way to get something done is to start doing it. Boom.